Viewers, drop your location and the exact time on the clock right now because this story begins with a clock-stopping sound. Ethan is cradling a mug of coffee, steam curling into the air when the grinding clash of metal on stone rattles his windows. He looks out, and the 100-year-old yard his grandfather left him is being buried alive beneath a flood of gray concrete. Diesel smoke hangs thick, cement dust coats his throat. And on the curb stands Brenda Hartwell, HOA president, arms crossed like she just won a county fair auction. Brenda doesn't know Ethan used to be a hydrologist for the Army Corps of Engineers. To her, he's just a man with an ugly yard. To him, she's just placed a concrete water bomb in the middle of the community. Historians still argue whether the Roman aqueducts were feats of beauty or just glorified plumbing. Ethan knows the answer. Water systems decide the fate of empires. And now his small yard has become one. He rushes outside, phone in hand, recording. "What are you doing, Brenda?" he asks. She smirks. "Upgrading your yard, Ethan. You can thank me later." It's the kind of smirk that makes you want to invent a sarcasm detector app. The crew rips up native shrubs, pours slurry, and erases a living legacy in minutes. Ethan's voice stays steady, but his hands shake as he films every drop. He knows the law and he knows nature, and Brenda has just broken both. When the trucks leave, the silence is louder than the engines. A once vibrant ecosystem gone. He walks the perimeter like it's a funeral. But then, kneeling in the muck, he sees something glinting. A rusted pipe, part of an intricate old drainage system his grandfather built by hand. He follows it to a stone depression filled with silt, the old heart of the land. Brenda hasn't just buried a yard. She's sealed off the artery that drains the whole hillside. Ethan feels anger solidify into strategy. His grandfather once told him the cleverest plan is to let your opponent make the mistake. Well, she just made hers in wet cement. As he wipes mud from his palms, he decides he won't just fight. He'll out-engineer, out-document, and outlast her. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen the Egyptians swore by? It worked better than Brenda's legal beautification project. She thinks she's protected the neighborhood. All she's done is build a dam pointing straight at her million-dollar row of homes. The smear campaign starts quietly like mildew on drywall. You don't see it until it's everywhere. Flyers land in mailboxes with a photo of Ethan's concrete slab yard screaming, "A threat to our property values." Neighbors who once waved now duck into garages. Brenda has painted him as the eccentric outsider, and social exile stings worse than any fine. Even Mrs. Peterson, who'd baked him pecan pies as a kid, won't meet his eyes. Social terror, HOA style. Then comes the final notice, stamped in red like a grade school detention slip, billing him for the concrete itself, plus fines big enough to buy a used Tesla. The kicker: pay in 30 days or lose the cabin to a lien. Brenda isn't enforcing rules, she's waging war. Ethan remembers his grandfather's blueprint scrolls and digs them out. On the brittle paper, he finds a faint hand-drawn line beneath the yard labeled in spidery script, "The source of life. Beware those who would fill it." Scholars still argue whether Nostradamus was predicting floods or just selling booklets, but Ethan feels his grandfather's warning in his bones. And then a whisper in the dark. Mr. George, a retired neighbor with shaky hands, presses an address into Ethan's palm. "She meets there," he mutters. "Downtown law firm." Inside, Ethan learns Brenda's beautification is backed by a real estate shark, her own brother, and plans for a tech hub worth millions. Suddenly, the concrete slab looks less like ugly yard work and more like a land grab dressed in HOA stationery. He needs a fighter. And he finds one Eleanor Vance attorney with a cluttered office and a business card that simply says, "I fight HOA bullies." She pores over the photos, the pipe, the blueprint, and grins. "Ethan, this isn't about aesthetics. This is water rights. Whole different ballgame." The next HOA meeting becomes theater. Brenda waves a geological report printed on smudged paper claiming Ethan's soil endangered the neighborhood. He stands calm as a professor in tweed and asks for the original document. Brenda snarls about proprietary data. It's the legal equivalent of "my dog ate it." For the first time, the crowd murmurs against her. Still, she escalates. A local blog runs a hit piece, "Unstable Lakeside Resident Endangers Community." Ethan laughs bitterly. It reads like a tabloid headline sandwiched between Elvis sightings. But the smear shows she's scared. She even sends goons to rip down his new fence, then pulls up in her SUV to gloat. "You don't belong here," she hisses. He studies the broken posts and thinks, "No, you don't belong here. This land answers to water, not you." Every step she takes digs her deeper. The rains are coming, and Brenda doesn't know she's built her empire on a swamp waiting to wake. The town hall is packed. Not HOA headquarters neutral ground. The air smells of coffee and damp coats, and every chair squeaks as neighbors settle in. Ethan stands at the podium, a projector humming behind him. Brenda sits in the front row, pearls tight around her throat, lawyer smirking like he's already cashed the retainer. Ethan clicks the first slide, satellite images, years of aerial history, each frame tracing the hidden creek beneath their homes. He overlays his grandfather's blueprint, the handwritten note, "The source of life." He explains how Brenda's concrete wasn't an upgrade but a dam redirecting floodwater right toward her $1 million street. Scholars still argue whether Noah's Ark was a myth or a manual, but in that moment, the room believes Ethan's warning like scripture. Brenda shoots to her feet, shouting preposterous, but the crowd isn't looking at Ethan anymore. They're looking at her. Then he plays the video. Grainy but clear Brenda, her brother, and a developer pointing at Ethan's cabin on a map, laughing. The room erupts. A retired doctor rises trembling, confessing Brenda threatened her medical license if she spoke out. Suddenly, silence feels like betrayal, and the neighbors begin to murmur their own fears aloud. Brenda's empire of intimidation is cracking. Court follows. Brenda's lawyer spins her as a visionary victim, Ethan as a paranoid loner. He even flashes glossy lawn photos like they're exhibits in a gardening magazine. But Eleanor dismantles him piece by piece. A soil scientist calls Brenda's report fraudulent. A civil engineer confirms the drainage system's importance. And then the gut-punch financial ledgers showing HOA funds funneled to Brenda's brother and a local official. On the stand, Brenda performs tears, but Eleanor's quiet question slices through. If this was beautification, why the secret payments? Brenda stammers, slips, and finally blurts the whole scheme, the tech hub, the bribes, the promised fast-track permits. Her own words bury her deeper than any cross-exam could. Then comes the finale, a grainy film reel from 1962. Ethan's grandfather appears on the screen, young and steady, mapping out the drainage with Army engineers. The jury leans forward. Even the judge's stern face softens. It is proof history and legacy rolled into one. By the end, the courtroom is silent. Verdict: guilty. Fraud, conspiracy, reckless endangerment. Brenda's reign of fear ends not with a bang, but with her own confession echoing in the still air. In the weeks after the neighborhood shifts, reporters swarm, but Ethan shrugs them off. The real victory is quieter, breaking up the concrete slab with neighbors who now bring shovels instead of gossip. They uncover rusted pipes, replant grasses, laugh about concrete casseroles. Brenda served the land. The restored system works. The first rain drains smoothly, Brenda's flooded mansions standing as monuments to her hubris. The community rewrites its charter, no more rule by fear. Now it's gardens, picnics, and respect for the land. Ethan compiles his grandfather's blueprints into a book about restoration, not revenge. It becomes an unexpected success, but his favorite review is from the children who show up one sunny afternoon carrying a hand-painted sign, "Thank you, Ethan." They beg for stories about the old man who saved them. And so Ethan becomes not just a hydrologist, not just a fighter, but a storyteller, keeper of a legacy that will ripple like water long after him. The pace slows. Nights on the porch stretch longer. Coffee grows cooler as sunsets bleed into lake reflections. Neighbors wave without fear. The laughter of children mixes with cicadas, steady and soft. Ethan thinks of his grandfather, that gentle smile caught forever on film, and he knows the old man would be proud. The water flows where it should, the land breathes again, and the truth, like a river, has found its way home. Now the story eases like twilight settling over the ridge. The frantic noise of engines, the clang of court gavels, the gossip that once curled like smoke, all of it fades into the background. What remains is a slower rhythm, almost a lullaby. The cabin breathes with its land again. The porch timbers creaking, not under the weight of worry, but under the comfort of belonging. The grass sways in the evening breeze, 100 shades of green, whispering the same truth his grandfather once knew, that land resists greed and water always finds its course. The concrete is gone, replaced by wildflowers that tilt their heads toward the dusk. For the first time in years, the community is no longer looking over shoulders. They look forward together. Children dart barefoot across the restored yard, laughter carrying further than sirens ever did. The neighbors, once divided by fear, lean on each other again, their conversations lighter, their voices warm. No one speaks Brenda's name anymore. It drifts like dust, a cautionary tale that no longer needs repeating. Ethan sits quietly, the air heavy with the scent of pine and fresh soil. His mug rests in his hands, cooling slowly as his thoughts do. He doesn't feel like a warrior or a man who toppled an empire of fines and threats. He feels like a keeper entrusted with something far older and far stronger than any HOA charter. And when the last rays slip beneath the horizon, painting the lake in amber and violet, he hears it, the faint imagined murmur of his grandfather's voice. Not a command, not a warning, just a gentle whisper that seems to ride on the breeze. You kept the water flowing, Ethan. You kept the story alive. The night settles, the story rests,